aviation analyst Keith Mackey. Keith, obviously very early. We don't really know what happened other than we're hearing, weather and that this plane skidded. What are your thoughts?
Well, good afternoon, Beverly. That's what we're hearing. They describe the airport as a tabletop airport, which means that when you get to the end of the runway, there's a sharp drop off. And apparently, the aircraft was going too fast to stop, went off the edge and broke in half. Now, it's monsoon season over there, and that's typical heavy rain and wind and that sort of thing. So I'm sure there were a lot of contributing factors. The
And
visibility.
given that it is monsoon season, and in fact it's the height of monsoon season, tell me what kinds of things a pilot would know how to do in terms of flying and then landing an airplane in these kinds of conditions.
Well, you would expect rain, and actually, the visibility was reported as 2,000 meters. That's probably what the pilot heard. And the monsoon season means the weather can change very rapidly. So the rain could increase and decrease the visibility suddenly, maybe even after he's touched down. The wind could shift, which means it would be harder to stop the airplane. It would require more braking. So there are a number of factors, and I'm sure the investigators will cover all of these in their investigation. But
And what
it's
can
an
you tell us about it sliding down this run or sliding down this embankment, almost 35 meters, and then splitting in two?
but probably split in two at the top, and the front end of the aircraft went over the edge and down the embankment. But these are the risks when you build airports in that sort of situation. We like to have what we call an overrun at the end of each runway where possible, so that if this situation happens, the aircraft just continues on, hopefully on a paved section of the overrun, or at least in an area where it's safe and protected and is not going to be damaged.
And what about these tabletop runways? I mean, if that's a possibility, and certainly in inclement weather, are they just that much more risky? Should they even be allowed?
Well, it is a measure of risk. Now, the runway here was almost 3,000 meters long. So it's an adequate runway, particularly for a 737. So the question will become, did the aircraft touch down at the proper point on the runway? When did the braking begin? And when they get the cockpit voice recorder and data recorder out, they're going to learn all of these things. So we'll find out exactly what happened, if it was wind shear or if we
And,
maybe.
yeah, I'm just looking at another incident in May 2010, again in monsoon season, where another India Air Express flight skidded off the runway, killing 158 people. Is this something that we hear about very often? I mean, planes either overshooting or skidding off?
Well, unfortunately, some cities aren't located where they can have the type of airport that we might like. Sometimes there's very limited places to place the airport, and we end up with a tabletop situation or a short runway situation. And this should be accommodated by the way the type of aircraft that's used and the weights that it's allowed for takeoff and landing. And these sort of things are tailored to compensate for any shortcomings that the airport or the runway may have.
Rescue efforts underway there now. Keith Mackey, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome, Beverly.